In a story pitting good against evil, you can usually expect the protagonist to come out on top. Yes, there may be exceptions, but heroes in movies do kill, and sometimes they get a helping hand from the other side. Whether one villain got in the way of another, a temporary alliance came to the end of its mutual benefits, or a good old classic case of revenge, villains kill villains, and usually in the most brutal of ways. With that in mind, I'm Adam from Whatculture, and here are 10 movie villains who killed other villains. Number 10. Surtur killed Hela, Thor Ragnarok. There were a handful of different villains that Thor went up against in his third solo movie back in 2017. Although Loki was arguably more hero, or at least anti-hero, than villain by this point, there was still Surtur, Hela, and the Executioner Scourge. The former was utilized right at the beginning of Ragnarok, seemingly more as a plot device connecting the journey Thor began in Age of Ultron to his eventual return to Asgard. It also served as a quick reminder of how awesome the God of Thunder was with Mjolnir in hand, as if anyone needed reminding. It seemed as though Surtur was to be another secondary villain who wouldn't be seen past the first act in the MCU, and yet he made his triumphant return when Loki plunged his crown into the eternal flame in Odin's vault. The fire demon grew into the size of a mountain and destroyed not only Asgard, as Ragnarok prophesied, but he destroyed Hela as well. Thor was absolutely no match for his big sister, and so enlisting the help of the monster whose arse he kicked at the beginning of the film was the only way to take her down. Number 9. Dr. Evil killed his henchman, Austin Powers, International Man of Mystery. As far as spoof movies go, Austin Powers is the very pinnacle. The International Man of Mystery himself is every bit the spy James Bond is, though obviously far more groovy, baby, and shagadelic. From the ridiculous plots to the gadgets and a different female companion every time, Austin Powers shares a lot in common with 007, though it's not just him. Dr. Evil was crafted to be the ultimate stereotypical Bond villain. This was clear from the very first scene of the very first movie, when Austin's yet-to-be-revealed half-brother sat in his chair, back to camera, stroking Mr. Bigglesworth. Even his aesthetic was clearly molded on Blofeld. This scene showed a meeting between Evil and his villainous henchmen, all of whom had apparently tried and failed to kill Austin Powers previously. What better way to introduce the movie's big bad than by having him kill 4 of his own people? Rita, Don Luigi, Generalissimo, and Jorgen were all fed to the fire, leaving just Mustafa and Frau Farbacina. In fairness, even if he had tried to fry Will Ferrell's character, he later proved utterly impossible to kill, and would have just complained of a sprained ankle from within the flames or something. Number 8. Hannibal killed Miggs, The Silence of the Lambs. Hannibal Lecter is one of the most infamous and recognizable villains in cinematic history. Anthony Hopkins' chilling performance, as well as the iconic hiss, have made the character unforgettable, and though he may have killed and eaten multiple people, one of the creepiest things Hannibal did was to the man in the next cell. Miggs may not have had much of a role to play in the story, he wasn't as involved as the other villains Buffalo Bill and Hannibal Lecter himself, but he was still a dangerous and vile human being. There's no nice way of saying what he did to Clarice Starling. He threw a certain bodily fluid at her and laughed about it. Hannibal, ever the courteous cannibal, found this to be disgusting and so punished Miggs. Without ever laying a hand on him, Hannibal whispered to his cell neighbor through the night and convinced him to kill himself. This may have technically been a suicide, but rest assured it was Dr. Lecter's doing. This scene showed just how brutal, how intelligent, how manipulative, and how dangerous Hannibal Lecter was all in one go. Number 7. Davy Jones killed the Kraken, Pirates of the Caribbean, at World's End. Was there a more commanding or feared creature across the ocean than Davy Jones? The tentacle-faced, slimy git made his first appearance in Pirates of the Caribbean: Dead Man's Chest, and was a force to be reckoned with, commanding the Flying Dutchman and a crew of monsters. Though an intimidating force of his own, the big guns in Jones' arsenal was the Kraken, a foul leviathan that he essentially aimed at whatever he wanted destroyed. However, Jones also had a crippling weakness. This, of course, was his heart. Whoever held possession of the Dead Man's Chest could destroy Davy Jones, and when this fell into Lord Cutler Beckett, he used this power to control to great effect. In between the events of the second and third third movie, Beckett forced Jones to kill the Kraken, something of which only the aftermath was shown. As Davy Jones' aquatic attack dog, the Kraken was a devastating force in the ocean, and even would have killed Captain Jack Sparrow had his crew not gone to World's End to get him back. Not wanting Jones to ever rebel and send the beastie against the East India Trading Company, Beckett commanded that it be put down. Number 6. Killmonger killed Ulysses Klaue, Black Panther. Klaue was introduced as an antagonist in Age of Ultron, and was the man who provided Tony Stark's ill-advised AI with the vibranium that ultimately became Vision's body. Though he was one arm lighter after coming face to face with Ultron, he at least escaped with his life. The same couldn't be said about his dealings with N'Jadaka. The Wakandan prince worked with Klaue to steal more vibranium, but when Killmonger broke his accomplice out of prison, it was only so he could kill him. Klaue himself was a ruthless murderer, but had no answer to the man literally known as Killmonger. N'Jobu's son knew of the history between Ulysses Klaue and the Wakandans, and used his corpse not only as his ticket into the country, but to rally support as the challenger to T'Challa's kingdom from the likes of W'Kabi and the Border Tribe. This death was essential to the villain's ultimate plan. Number 5. Anakin Skywalker killed Count Dooku, Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Anakin Skywalker was once one of the finest Jedi the Order could boast. Even if he was denied the rank of Master, he was up there with the greatest swordsmen and pilots in the galaxy. And yet his own arrogance and belief that he could be even better overcame his tendencies of good, and he ultimately became Darth Sidious's apprentice. You could pinpoint the exact moment Anakin submitted to the dark side as being when Palpatine first proclaimed him Darth Vader, or when he slaughtered all those children, but arguably the first true step on his path to the Sith was when he killed Count Dooku. The killing of an enemy itself isn't breaking any rules of the Jedi, but it was in the way it happened. Skywalker killed another being because he was instructed to by Darth Sidious. He gave in to his anger and hate, and then became free to step into Lord Tyrannus' shoes as the next Sith apprentice. Up until very recently, you could have counted Darth Vader's turn against Palpatine as part of this list. However, Rise of Skywalker's laziest retcon put a swift end to such thoughts. But there's no taking back Anakin relieving Count Dooku of his head. Number 4. Poppy killed Charles, Kingsman, the Golden Circle. After Richmond Valentine attempted to essentially reduce the world's population to just the richest and most powerful people on the planet in Kingsman: The Secret Service, the sequel had to bring something new from its antagonist. Though Poppy's motivation in the Golden Circle wasn't great, as it ultimately came down to a play for more money, she was certainly more brutal and psychotic than her predecessor. Without putting too fine a point on it, Poppy was absolutely crazy, threatening, and very prepared to kill billions across the world in the blink of an eye. This was a part of Poppy holding everyone who had ever used her drugs hostage in a bid to get the president to legalize such activities. But this wasn't the only reason she killed. Part of the success of Julianne Moore's character, at least to begin with, was in no small part thanks to her anonymity, and she would go to extreme lengths to protect that. When one of Poppy's henchmen, Charles, sought to bring someone else into the operation, she did what any sensible-minded, eccentric villain would do. She ordered the new guy to feed her previously trusted accomplice into the meat grinder, the product from which she cooked a human burger and forced the new guy to eat. Number 3. The Joker killed Lau, the Dark Knight. It was a harrowing delivery when Alfred Pennyworth told Bruce Wayne that some men just want to watch the world burn. He was of course referring to the chaos that the Joker was eliciting, but this wasn't all the Clown Prince of Crime wanted to burn. Towards the beginning of The Dark Knight, the Joker attempted to negotiate a 50% fee of all the combined money of Gotham's organized crime syndicate to kill Batman. It was a while before he was hired, and with all of the physical dollar bills being brought together by Lau, the next step was simple. Lau, essentially the accountant of the villainous group, who had earned a living outside of the law with his aptitude of calculations, was sat atop the big pile of cash strapped to a chair. He had no way of escaping when the Joker set fire to his half. The murder of Lau may have been just because the Joker liked chaos and wanted to watch the world burn, as Alfred said, or maybe it was more meaningful than that. He said himself it wasn't about the money, it was about sending a message. And what better way to prove it than killing the accountant? Number 2. Eric Lensher killed Sebastian Shaw, X-Men First Class. Magneto's story is actually incredibly similar to another villain on this list. Like Darth Vader before him, Magneto played the villain in a movie trilogy before a sequel showed who he was before he turned to the life of an antagonist. With Anakin Skywalker, it was the Star Wars prequels, and with Ulrich Lenscher, it was X-Men First Class. Though the mutant was in line with Charles initially in regards to their rights, their specific motivations, their methods, and just how far they were prepared to go differed greatly. To put it as simply as possible, Ulrich was just a bit more murdery. That aside, however, his vendetta against Sebastian Shaw was deeply personal. It was Shaw who, in an attempt to draw out young Ulrich's power, killed the poor boy's mother. Charles pleaded with his friend not to cross that line when the opportunity for revenge presented itself, as he knew there was no going back, but Ulrich didn't listen. Magneto didn't just kill Shaw in any old way, it was brutal. He took the very coin Shaw tried to get him to move as a boy and slowly pushed it through the villain's brain and out the other side. Number 1. Sullivan killed Costello, the Departed. As far as twists and turns, secrets and lies, and not having a clue what's going to happen next, there aren't many like The Departed. Martin Scorsese's masterpiece pit deception against deception, and rat against rat until basically everyone was dead. It may not have been on the same level as Sullivan or Costigan's ultimate deaths in terms of shock value, but Costello's death was the big one. Jack Nicholson's character was the big bad of the piece and tied the story together. He was at the center of everything, and who the likes of Dignam wanted dead. The man who eventually brought Costello down was a legitimate part of the police, but not who he would have expected to finally nail him. Sullivan was like the son Costello never had, and as the mob boss's mole within the Force, he was just as much a villain as his father figure. But it was ultimately Sullivan who shot Costello in the chest. The two came together as the manhunt for the latter reached its conclusion, and upon admitting that he was an informant himself, Costello was killed by Sullivan. How ironic that the one man in the police force that managed to kill Costello was the one that put him there himself.